I'm here in Wickenburg, Arizona with former Smokejumper Art Morrison, and it's February 8th, 2014. Do you want to give your name?
Yeah, Art Morrison, MSO, 1968 through 77.
And do you know that you're being video recorded?
I'm pretty sure I am, John.
Okay. All right. When did you first hear about the Smokejumpers?
Wow. I had been accepted at the University of Montana in wildlife biology. And so I went out in advance because I wanted to check it out. And I ended up not going there because it was too much money. I went to Penn State instead because I was from Pennsylvania. But I found out you could fill out a form you could get at the post office and send it to Forest Service and maybe get a summer job. And so I did that. And sure enough, I just turned 18 and I got a call from the district ranger up there in Kootenai. His name was Bill Magnuson, saying, hey, we need some more crew, can you come on out? But no paperwork, no nothing. And my parents thought I was crazy, but then I lived on the edge. And sure enough, I went out there and I had a job. And Johnny Viken I was on a timber stand improvement using bow saws. And Johnny Viken was the foreman. And he was an ornery character. And he was all upset because he had to take me to town to get steel-toe boots. I didn't have steel, I just had waffle stompers, And so anyhow, the summer went on, and we finally had to shut down the forest somewhat because of the fire danger, and sure enough we had a fire. We had a 10, or maybe it was 8, no I think it was 10, there were 10 of us on the crew. And so we had a fire start up in the North Fork, or no, it was up in the Yak River, because I worked out of the upper ford there on the Yak. And so we're up there and we're ground pounder crew, and we get into that fire, and all of a sudden we see these guys flying over, jumping out with these fancy parachutes and stuff. And we were down at the toe, and they jumped up on top. So then they came down at the toe, like we're supposed to do, and we kind of met up, and said, hi, well, I'll meet you at the top, You never saw some ground pokes work as hard. I mean, we were pretty tough because, we were sawing all day long. And so we met them at the top, and I got to talking to the jumpers, and they had all this good food and all this wonderful equipment. We had we had World War II sea rations. And they had the gut bags, I think then, we called them that. And so anyhow, I met this guy named Joe Janis from Pennsylvania. And I'm talking to him, and he's a school teacher that would come out in the summers. And he says, you got to think about being a smoke jumper. And I said, oh man, I'd like to, that'd be great. So anyhow, Bill Magnuson, the ranger, he called me at school, when I was back to college that winter, and he said, because I use jumpers, I get 2 placements for smoke jumpers. And I want you and Claire Olson to be the 2. It's like, I was 18 years old. So anyhow, I took it, and Claire and I both started jumping that year, 68.
So that was your new man year.
That was my rookie year, yep.
And before we talk about that, when you put in for be a wildlife biologist, did you have an outdoor kind of life in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, oh yeah. Most of my kinfolk were either farmers or worked in the woods. My dad and I and uncles and grandfathers, we'd hunt and fish, and it was just kind of an outdoor life.
And then, so your new man year was 1968. What do you remember about that year? About the training of that year.
The training part. I remember that I arrived with a bad sprained ankle. I'd been running a lot, trying to get ready to do all this stuff. And I was so fearful that someone was going to find out. But I managed to do everything. Marty Litvin was our squad leader. And no, I never told anyone. But I made it through the hard part, and then of course the jumping part was easy. Because they'd hike you up the mountain, then they'd hike you back down to get tolls or water, and then you go up and you dig dry line. I mean, it was just constant harassment. And we had quite a few guys drop out, but I wasn't one of them.
Do you remember any of the people in your new man class?
Yeah, well, there's Claire. Oh, I remember a lot of them. I remember you. Bill Newmeister, In my group, there was Bill Mast, Bill Neumeister, Munson, Melby, who went on to be a psychologist, I think. That's all that's coming to mind now.
Do you remember your first fire, your first jump, your practice?
Oh,
jump?
yeah. First 3 jumps were in Alaska. It was wonderful.
But your first jump out of the airplane?
Oh, yeah.
What do you remember about that?
Well, you know, you're up there and it's noisy. And I don't think anyone was puking like sometimes happen, but it was just so noisy. And the thing I remember most when I jumped out was the quiet. It was just, it's like I've told people, the only thing that comes close to that feeling for me is when I'm scuba diving without the tanks. You know, when you're underwater and just everything is so mellow, you know.
Yeah.
But then it only lasts for a minute or so, and then you got to work, so.
So your first 3 jumps were up in Alaska?
Uh-huh.
For out of where you jumping out?
I think those were out of Anchorage. It's when they still had a base there. I think they don't do that anymore. And then, of course, I went up there several times over the time I was jumping out of Fairbanks and Bettles and McGrath and Lake Iliamna and all those places.
So you jumped 10 years, and how often do you figure you jumped?
I had 137 jumps,
And then,
which by today's standards is nothing, you know. I mean, there's guys that have made a real career of it, and they have hundreds and hundreds of jumps.
well, do you remember, what's the jump you remember the most?
Probably jumping on a fatality.
And where was that at?
That was down the Bitterroot. A wildlife biologist and pilot had doggered in. I was one of the 2 emergency medical technicians that was jumping, and so I did those kind of jumps.
Where was that out on the Bitterroot?
Oh, I don't remember.
Is that back in the Magruder?
No, it was on the east side. And the sheriff came up. I mean, you know, we had built a helipad and all that stuff, but
Yeah.
that was, you know, it's the first time I'd been on an incident where there was a fatality. That was.
Well, how did you qualify to be an EMT?
Well, they'd started that program in Montana, mid-70s, early. I just remember I got extra work because Jerry Ford's kid was staying out there on a ranch somewhere. And they had a beginning class, and then the next year there was another class. And so I signed up for it. I qualified.
It was a state, in other words, as a citizen, you qualified for
Yeah.
it, not as a smoke jumper.
No, but
So-
then that gave me, I mean, the federal government didn't pay for me to go, but it gave me a niche that other people didn't have.
So how many EMTs were on the jump list, do you think?
At one time, there was only 2 of us. I think it was me and, what was the other one? It might have been Lowell Hanson. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But then, you know, later other guys did it too.
Yeah. Did you use that very often? Or was that the only time?
The jump on a fatality, that was the only time.
No, I mean the only, EMT, as an EMT.
Oh, no, I mean, as part of that training, you had to ride with ambulances and work in emergency rooms.
But I mean as a jumper.
As a jumper, well, when I would go on pounder fires, when they look at the calls, sometimes they'd put me as an EMT rather than, you know, like a sector boss or part of the crew. Just because they were short of medical people.
So as you worked your way through those 10 years as a jumper, was it mostly jumping and some EMT, or did you get more responsibilities in the incident command system? Was there anything?
None. Well, I ended up being sector boss qualified in the old fire organization. And then after I retired from jumping and got a real full-time job up there in the Flathead, well, then I ended up being a division boss. But then when I went to DC, I lost all my calls because they had never heard then of, you know, letting Forest Service guys go fight fire. Now they've, of course, changed all that. But, so then the only thing I could do then was either start over again when I got back west or else go into public information, which was my professional line of work in legislative affairs, and so I did that.
So you were